Man, I don't know about you, and well, first of all, I'm sorry for just popping up live. It's Sunday night, about 8:18 East Coast time. Time is winding down. I'm on the move. Pretty soon, I will be streaming live from California. So on July 4th to August 13th, I will be living in California, me and my sons. I will be there preaching at a friend of mine's church for 6 Sundays, Christ Church of the Presidio in San Francisco. And during the week, me and my boys are just going to do a bunch of stuff, traveling. We'll be hitting San Diego, LA, Lake Tahoe. We're just doing a bunch of stuff, man. It's been a tough season for my family, and so I'm excited to take my boys on this vacation. So if you're in the Cali area from July, I'd say 5th, because I ain't doing nothing the day I land, through the 13th, man, I'd love to catch up with you out when I'm streaming live and I'm on the Cali side. I'll try to say what I'm doing and where I'm at. If people are in the area and want to chop, that'd be cool. That's what's up. If not, I'm there to have fun with my boys and do stuff with them anyway. All right. Had a great day at church today, man. So we had child dedications first. So we had about 12 people come on stage with their babies. Most of them were newborns on stage. Yes, my church gets busy. Right. They getting busy. So it was a bunch of people up there. Then we welcomed about 19 new members, 18 or so new members to the church. So that was cool to bring them up and in front of the stage. And then we had about 12 people get baptized. And so the way we do baptisms at our church is the people come up, they share a little bit of their testimony, and then they do that. And then they get baptized. And every once in a while, depending on the relationship the person has with other people, I might be like, hey man, come on up here and baptize your daughter or so forth. So that was a moment. So it was just a great Sunday today. But afterwards, me and one of my leaders, we were hanging out and we were talking about the day and just grateful to the Lord. And we got into this conversation about like seminary and truth, and it spilled over into guys who people would deem as false teachers, like Michael Todds and Stephen Furtick's and Joel Osteen's and so forth. And we had this interesting conversation about their platforms and why they are big, because especially when you consider that there are people who make YouTube videos exposing these false teachers. People would say Joyce Myers, Paula White, Benny Hinn. I mean, you've seen this for a long time. But these people seemingly continue to have these huge ministries. And they're usually, if we're being honest, most of the ministries that are deemed heretical, false teachers, they're bigger platforms than the people who are trying to expose them. Rarely do we see people with a huge platform exposing other people with these big platforms. No, it's usually people with YouTube channels that are my size, smaller, and upwards to maybe 10, 20,000 subscribers that are calling out these false teachers. And I think, hey, do what you do. If that's what you feel like the Lord's called you to do, I think there are times when it's needed. But I do wonder sometimes, and I'm sure there are examples of people who have watched those videos that are members of those people's churches that end up seeing it for what it is. But I would say the vast majority of people, I could be wrong, because I don't follow Michael Todd. I don't follow Stephen Furtick. The people that people say are the most false teachers that are really popular, I don't follow these folks. So I could be wrong in what I'm about to say. But my impression is not that a bunch of people are leaving their churches because they're being exposed as false teachers. Even there were a couple of documentaries, I think, called The Gospel. Somebody help me if I could be wrong. I think it was like, I saw the first one. There's like 2 or 3 of them where a lot of it is exposing like prosperity teachers and all of that. Think about this for a second. If prosperity teachers are constantly being exposed, or just false teachers, the Jamal Bryants in the black community, the Creflo Dollars, the TD Jakes. I mean, TD Jakes is a little bit different because of the Diddy stuff. That might be sort of and it might be the curtain for him, right? But we see these false teachers, presumably. I don't follow them, so I'm going to go with the narrative. I think from what I see, but we see them, and as many things as people said about Joel Osteen, he still has one of the biggest platforms in America. So why is that? Why is Michael Todd winning? Why are these people winning if they're not even speaking truth? They got people who are exposing them. Why are they winning? This is what we're going to talk about today. And stay with me, because it may sound like it's left field, but y'all know if you follow the channel, I usually try to make sense by the time you get through with it. First things first, welcome to CNN. I'm the underdog, Kirk Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. If you are of the Christian tradition, such as I am, you want to remember that our job is to remember the future. Remember the day of the Lord, that Jesus is coming back, where every knee will bow and every tongue confess. To remember the future, we want to be right there, right? And if you follow the channel, thank you so much. You guys are amazing. You give me super chats, all this stuff. You like and subscribe. Please continue to like and subscribe. I'm doing some things. I'm going to be doing some shorter videos. I'm going to do these things in 8 minutes type videos, but I'm also going to keep longer content like which we're about to have right now. This is not going to be an 8-minute video. So don't think, for those of you who think, oh man, I like the long videos. I'm not switching. I'm just adding more shorter videos to the channel because I love to grow, because I think the Lord has given something to say to people that may be beneficial. All right. Having said that, why do Michael Todd, fill in the blank, Stephen Furtick, Joel Osteen, whoever you think is a false teacher that has a big platform, why are these people winning? Why are they winning? So what do I mean by winning, first and foremost? All right. By winning, I don't mean God is pleased and prospering their ministries. I don't think that. I think the Bible is very clear, right? So you get stuff like Romans 11, the gifts and the call are irrevocable. Now, some people take that to mean that God will give you gifts and a calling, and even if you disobey or you don't teach truth, that God's not going to take the gift away, right? So the gifts and the call are irrevocable. That's something that people think. I think there's some truth in that. I think you see 1 Corinthians 3, where Paul talks about, and the scriptures, and I think most theologians would say that in 1 Corinthians 3, Paul is talking about people who are ministers of the gospel, and said that each man's work will be built, will be measured, evaluated, judged by the foundation in which he built. And the foundation is the truth of the gospel. And it says if he built on hay, wood, and straw, his work will be burned up, though he himself will be saved. But if he built on metals and things, sometimes I forgot the metals that he uses, but he says that they will get rewards for that. So there are people whom, if you interpret that passage the way that it seems like it says, is there going to be people, presumably a Mike Todd, potentially, right? If he's a false teacher, as said, and I think there's a case to be made that a lot of the stuff he's doing is just not good. But if that's true, then it's possible, based on 1 Corinthians 3, that he might be saved but his works will be burned up. He won't get rewards for the foundation that he built on the gospel. But he's seemingly getting rewards right now. It seems like that, right? So what is going on here? Why is it that people like a Michael Todd is winning, and you got people who are sound teachers, sound pastors who are struggling to keep churches of 250 afloat? Teachers who are struggling to have people come back from COVID and actually be a part of their church again. Why are churches that are sound, that have good, solid theology, why are they not winning when pastors who seemingly don't have those things have the big channels, the big influence, the world stages? Everyone's talking about them. Why is that happening? Why is winning? So what do I mean by winning? I don't mean that God is pleased and they're winning in that sense. I mean winning by simply the world standards, or the world/American standards, which we know America is a very seen and heard society, right? Like, if you ever watch American Idol, I've watched it. I haven't watched it for a while, But back when it first came on, the thing I loved about American Idol the most, and I've said this before in the video, so if you've heard it before, humor me. You clicked on the video. What I used to love about American Idol were the first 2 weeks, because it was always the bloopers. I mean, people would be wilding. You know, sometimes they would follow people's stories, and then you think, oh, maybe this person can sing. Because sometimes when they follow the story, they get up there and they're incredible, and it's like, okay. But sometimes they tricked us by get up there and the dude's in there, what are you going to say? I'm going to sing The Way I Come Home by such and such. All right, give it a go. Well, I came around the time. And the judges are looking at each other like, you got to be kidding me. And then we're dying laughing because we don't know if this person could sing. And then it's just, so the bloopers, it was funny. But what we don't realize is most of those people are actually genuinely offended when they don't make it. They're genuine. Some of it is an act for sure. I remember this one time, I don't remember what season this was. I remember one time this dude came in there. I think he was from like Atlanta or somewhere down south. Like black dude, had on little dreads, these gold teeth with shades on. And this Bama came into American Idol and was like this, hey, baby, I got your money. That's all he was hitting. And it was so funny that the judges were like, it was just like, you just gotta, why is this dude here, right? There are some people that troll, but for the most part, people that go on those shows do not have real friends. They don't have people to say, fam, you can't sing. It sounds good to you in the shower, or it sounds good to you when you singing with a bunch of people because you hearing all them people. Or it sounds good to you when you singing with the song because the song is drowning out your voice. You can't sing, fam. They don't have real friends. Or they have people who are equally deceived, right? But the reality is underneath that, you know what people want? They want to be seen and heard. And what American Idol provided, even if it was just for a few seconds, you got what they call 15 minutes of fame. Some people have 15 seconds. People want to be seen and heard. We're a country that wants to be seen and heard, right? So people strive for that reality. So when I'm talking about winning, I'm talking about being seen and heard by a massive group of people. So having a big platform, having people talk about you. Like they say infamous still has the word famous in it, right? So even when you're infamous for something, it still has the word famous in it. People are still, what do they say? No press, no bad press is good press, or no, whatever, right? What I mean by winning is that why do these people, if they're consistently, and let's just keep it with Christians, right? Christians, we're supposed to be about truth. There's a reason why the Bible says repeatedly in the New Testament to worship him in spirit and in truth, right? We don't want you to worship in the spirit and not truth. We don't know what spirit that is. If it's not in spirit and in truth, then whatever spirit that is not truth, and it's a demonic spirit. No matter how much you. So why are they winning then? Why, if we're about truth, why are Christian preachers in particular, Christian influencers, but mainly teachers, why do they have these big platforms if they're being exposed as being false teachers? Why is Mike Todd, despite how many videos you've seen exposing his ministry and exposing his sermons and being like, please stop it. What are you doing? There's a guy I know that does a good job of this. His name is K-Dub. He does a good job exposing these guys. And I'm sure some people may have been like, hey, brother, I watched your video. Thank you. But the vast majority of people are not leaving their churches in droves. At least I don't know that. I'm not hearing a lot of people leaving Joel Osteen's church. I heard people leaving TDJ's, but that's different because the Diddy stuff and some of the ways he responded to it, people are like, hold on, man, he's wilding right now. But the vast majority of these people are not, they're not hearing truth. I know Benny Hinn a couple times has quote unquote repented and said, I'm repentant, but then he's right back at it. I don't get it. I don't know what it is. So my question is not a theological one. It's not, I'm sure that the pastors themselves think that they're pleasing God. I think it's fascinating to me when you're a teacher and you think because your platform is growing, it's a sign of God's favor. As if the biggest platform, the person who has the biggest platform, the most people following and worshiping is the devil, and you're not winning. You know what I'm saying? So, but we think somehow that, like, and it's human nature, when the rich young ruler walked away, and Jesus said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than the rich to be saved. Peter and them said, well, who then can be saved? Because they thought anyone who was rich had God's favor. It was a no-brainer to them. So they didn't understand it. Like, no, the rich are the most likely to not be saved because money covers the things that they would go to God for. That's why he told the rich young ruler, sell all your possessions that you have, give it to the poor, and then come follow me. Because he said, that's the real God. That's your real stronghold. That's your real resting place. It's not belief. It's not in the character when you said, I've done all these since my youth. No, it's really in your riches, your finances. But so it's in human nature to think if you have a big platform, you're big. I call them platform epistemologians. If you have a big platform, everyone acts like you have the most wisdom. And they'll be mad at you for thinking that they don't, and somehow you're hating. And it's like, no, I just disagree with this. Just because my platform is smaller doesn't mean his truth is better than my truth. But why then are they winning? What's happening here? Why despite all these videos, they still continue to push on? Now, maybe they think God is blessing them, and maybe so. But why is it? Why do guys who are deemed as false teachers have bigger platforms? You would think once the expose comes out, that's a wrap. Well, there are a couple verses. You could say, hey, this is why. Maybe you go to 1 Timothy 4, and you say, now the Spirit expressly says that in later times some will depart the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teaching of demons. Now, maybe that's what these guys are. I don't follow their teachings, so I'm not going to say it because other people do. I would need to see it, but I just don't. Right now, I don't care enough about to follow it, to make videos about it. I've done stuff here and there every once in a while, but not enough to create a channel going after it. But maybe if they're deceitful spirits and teaching of demons, maybe this because the Spirit said that people will depart from it, then that's why. It's just simply, it's fulfilling the prophecy that this verse is saying, that the Spirit told Paul this, right? Or maybe it's 2 Timothy, right? Paul said this in both of the Timothy 4s. 1 Timothy 4 here, 2 Timothy 4:3. Maybe it's this. For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will continue for themselves teachers to suit their own passions, right? Maybe it's that. Maybe that's the real issue. It's that the scripture says that there are going to be people who they don't have the ability to endure sound teaching. And I don't know what you think about this, but that's a crazy phrase, endure sound teaching. Listen to this. For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching. That's crazy that it says you have to endure sound teaching, right? So sound teaching then, if it needs to be endured, it must be something that is not always easily wanted or desired, right? I mean, you think about things that Jesus said that challenged people's thinking. Remember in John 6, when he said, you got to eat of my flesh and drink of my blood? And it said his disciples walked away. It wasn't just the average people. It were disciples, people that had already believed in him. And then he went to the 12 and said, oh, are you going to leave too? And Peter was like, where are we going to go? You got the keys to eternal life. You have to endure sound teaching. I don't know how much people in the modern era of our church think about this. You have to endure sound teaching. People get offended, even at times when I've shared things in the church and challenged, people have been offended and taken aback by that. And it's like, well, if my teaching isn't sound, then point that out to me, right? If I'm saying something that's not biblical, please show me that, because I don't want to do that. But if it's hard to hear because it ruffles your feathers, well, I'm not trying. If my tone isn't trying to do that, then but it's just what I said, you don't like it, that might not be a me issue, right? That might be just a part of enduring sound teaching. I think the fact that the scripture says that, it means sound teaching at times is going to rival us. I mean, let's be clear. Let's say someone really sins against you, right? A spouse, anyone close to you, and they've done it repeatedly. Sound teaching says you must forgive them. How many times do I forgive? 70 times 7, Jesus said. Jesus said in Matthew 6, 14 and 13, if you don't forgive others their trespasses, neither will your heavenly Father forgive you yours. Romans 12, 18. So as far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. 12, 19. Do not repay evil for evil, but overcome evil with good. That's sound teaching. How easy is that for us to do, though? When you're offended and hurt by someone, man, how many of you are not in a rush to go up and be like, I forgive you, I'm so grateful for you? Man, whatever. That's sound teaching. We have to endure it, right? So maybe it's that. But I don't think it's that. I think these are biblically true and these things are happening. I think people don't endorse sound teaching, and so they want teachers to suit their own passions. And I agree with that. I think it's biblical. Even in the Michael Todd case, I think people's theology of God is not, I obey because I belong to him because of what he's done. Their theology is, I'm obeying because I'm trying to get something from him. And that's how these guys teach. You need to obey, because if you don't, then God can't give you your purpose, your blessing, or and I just don't think that that's biblical at all. I think we obey because Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead. We obey because we belong to him. We don't obey because we're longing for more stuff from him, right? I want more God, not more from God. And if he gives us stuff, sweet. But that's what we want, right? So I think that happens. But that's not the real, I think those are true. But let me give you, there's one word. There's one word that I think why Michael Todd is still winning. Winning in the sense of he has a big platform and people are still following him and trust him. Why Stephen Furtick is winning. Why Joel Osteen and all these people are still winning. There's one word that I think, and I think this word is largely overlooked by the vast majority of the church, except some of these guys. I think these guys understand one thing that churches don't. And here's the word. It's this: marketing. And if I were to add 3 words, I would say marketing and advertising. This is why these guys are winning, and why many in the church who have truth are not winning. And I'm going to break this down on what I mean. And I'm going to show you an example, because this is very biblical. It's very biblical to do this. Marketing and advertising is very biblical, right? And Michael Todd, Stephen Furtick, Rick Warren, all the people with the bigger platforms, even Mars Hill, right? Even those folks. I remember listening to what happened to Mars Hill, talking about all of the stuff that they were doing, and it's just like, wow. And now, some people are mad that, Mark Driscoll's still a pastor, right? But he was brilliant at marketing and advertising. And I think this is vastly underscored in much of the evangelical church. Let me explain why first. And then I want to show you why marketing and advertising is both biblical and how it was used in ways that made sense, and why these guys are winning despite the fact that many people think they're not teaching truth. Marketing and advertising is not about truth, right? It's not about truth. You ever have this happen? You ever see, you ever been driving, right? Remember when gas was really, it might be really. The one thing about going to California I'm not looking forward to is gas there is double the gas I have here. I'm going to be a cool $1 million in debt coming back from California. I know it already. So pray for me. Start giving me more super chats. I'm going to need it. Go to Cash App. I'm going to need it. Go to Venmo. I'm going to need it. But you ever drive by the gas and it'll be like, oh, $3.19, right? When it was like $3.89, you're like, oh, wow. And then when you realize it said $3.19 with the car wash and signing up for a BP credit card. Otherwise, it was the same price as everything else, right? Marketing and advertising, it doesn't have to be based on truth. It can be, but marketing and advertising is not based on truth. It's based on, how do I present a message that seems true? Now, it can be true. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's about, how do I communicate the message to make it true and that people will want to buy it. The most successful marketing and advertising agencies hire people who know anthropology. You gotta understand, what makes a person buy a 2023 iPad and think, I need the 2024? Is the thinner iPad really the real issue? No, they understand something about human nature. Why is it that why is it when you watch a YouTube video, all of a sudden the algorithm gives you a whole bunch of videos that are from that person or that are with that topic, and all of a sudden it's like, dang, I clicked on it by accident, right? Why do you get advertisements for things that you looked at online? Because it's all connected. It's all of that, right? I remember watching this movie I think it was Total Recall. The good one, the Arnold Schwarzenegger version. That joint is still tough. Still tough. CGI stuff is still credible. And there was a scene where he was walking like in the future, and a camera would scan like his eyes, and then all of a sudden an advertising campaign would show up about something to try to get him to buy, something he may have looked at or knew that he wanted, right? There's something about marketing and advertising is about who can present the message in such a way that people want it. They want what that message is. It's not based on truth, even though it can be true. It's based on how do you communicate the message. This doesn't happen as much now, but remember back in the day, I'm sure many of you watched this. Back in the day, during the Super Bowl, one of the best parts of the Super Bowl were the commercials. I used to follow this before. If I wasn't a pastor, I used to be like, I want to work in marketing and advertising. I've always been fascinated by the Ad Council and other organizations, and I thought, man, they just do good stuff. So there was this, I don't get these anymore, but I used to follow this thing called Ad Age. It's supposed to be Adage, but it was Ad Age. And it was just all about like advertising and marketing. And it was always talking about the Super Bowl commercials. And there was a big deal. They charged top dollar to be these creative commercials, right? We get stuff like classic joints like the Frogs of Budweiser. Bud, Wise, And Budweiser blew up from that. It was a dumb thing of these frogs, but we loved it, right? Now marketing is marketing because we've moved to a influencer culture. We've moved into where we don't have leaders, we have influencers. And now we look to people who have platforms and are famous. So now you'll see Kim Kardashian and other celebrities in the Super Bowl commercials. Rather than create creative commercials, it's more put a bunch of celebrities in, because those are the new marketers now. Those are the people that we worship. Those are the people we want to be like. So marketing and advertising can be truthful, but it's less about this is truth. It's more about how do I advertise, market, and present this material in such a way that you want to buy what I'm saying. This is biblical to do, and this is why these guys are winning, and many in the church who have sound teaching or whose YouTube channels or whatever that are trying to expose them, why they're not winning. Let me tell you why. Because those guys are focusing on truth and sound doctrine, which is biblical to do. But that's not what people care about. People don't care about truth and sound doctrine as much as they care about how you present your material. They don't care. So when you expose them as false teachers because the Bible says this, they're not necessarily listening to these guys because they think they have a better truth than this pastor or this theologian. They don't listen to them because they listen to them because they like the way they market and advertise their version of truth. So while this is true, the spirit that some will depart from the faith, devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teaching of demons. You know why? Because demons and spirits, Satan is the greatest advertising and marketer. He knows how to market sinful things and make them desirable. And it's so under the radar. He has the greatest ad campaign ever. And it's simply, do you. You don't need God. Do you. You can be a good person. Satan has the biggest advertising and marketing strategy and it's the most successful because he has he has people that learned the truth about God and walked away from that truth, despite the fact that passages like Hebrews 10 talk about you've trampled again the Son of God underfoot. Right? He has the greatest because he markets his message, his version of truth so good that it makes you want it, right? Now, this could be a separate video, but I'm going to say this now. Do you know think about this for a second. If sin doesn't happen unless temptation comes, right? Sin does not come without temptation. We get this from James 1, 14 and 15. For each one when he is tempted, when he is lured and enticed by his own desire, right? So you don't have sin without temptation, right? And temptation can happen without sin being in the world. We know this from Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were not created sinful, but with the capacity to choose to sin, right? So they were tempted by the devil. We know that at some point, whether you believe Ezekiel 28 is speaking about the devil and Isaiah 14, however you think, we know this. The devil was a cosmic being created by God, very powerful, because even the archangel Michael in Jude 1:9 says the Lord blaspheme you, right? The Lord, he won't even do it, right? So he's a powerful being. At some point, Satan chose to sin against God. And then angels in Genesis 6, they chose it, but they didn't have a sin nature. As far as we know, there is no intrinsic sin nature that angels inherited because Satan sinned. Like humanity, we inherited Adam and Eve's propensity to sin. Sin would happen, but temptation can happen before sin. So if temptation can happen when there isn't sin, then what is the marketing advertising campaign of temptation? What would make Satan, who sees God face to face, what would make angels who stand in the very presence of God sin? What was the temptation? Because they didn't have a sin nature that they couldn't resist it. What was the temptation? What's the marketing? It's the greatest advertising marketing campaign that Satan has. There is not a temptation that you and I experience that doesn't have this as a marketing campaign. You are discontent, but if you do this, you'll be content. I promise you, anytime you're tempted to lust, to lie, to steal, whatever, the temptation in the message is you're dissatisfied with with the parameters that God's given you. You're dissatisfied. But if you do this, you will be sad. Look, you're dissatisfied with sex in the context of a marriage between a man and a woman. That's the only time you should express yourself. Other than that, control your body in holiness and honor, not like the Gentiles. Temptation tells you you're discontent. Satan was created a beautiful being, and he was discontent with that, so he wanted to rival God. The angels in Genesis 6 were discontent with the parameters that God gave them, so they went to earth and had sex with women and they created the Nephilim. You're discontent. I'm telling you the truth. When it comes to temptation, every temptation, the message of it is you're discontent with the parameters God's given you. But if you do this, you won't be. You won't be. That's the greatest marketing strategy ever. And that's what temptation is. That's what Satan brings about, right? So he's the greatest marketer. Marketing and advertising is key. And the reason why this is important, because a lot of believers today, pastors today, theologians, think it's about truth. No, we need truth. It's not about not being truth, but how are you marketing and advertising truth? I don't think I'm a pastor. I specialize in here's what all pastors have to think about. How do I make obedience to God attractive? Here's what happens. Here's what Michael Todd and him, I think, and I could be wrong. I don't watch his stuff. So if you're a Michael Todd, I'm sorry if I'm misrepresenting. I've seen clips of him, but I don't sit down and watch his messages fully. I've seen clips. I've seen some stuff, but I don't. So if you're offended, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. I don't care, to be honest. I just don't care. I'm not sure. This isn't really about Michael Todd in and of itself. It's about the strategy, right? So if you think he's true, good. Do you? I have questions about what I've seen, and there are other people that are much more invested that have credible concerns that they've presented, right? But here's what pastors do. Pastors will teach obedience and truth as if if you're a Christian, you just got to obey it and do it. You just got to believe truth and reject the lies and all, and we'll talk real dogmatic. But we're not as skilled as presenting the idea of we're in a world that is controlled by Satan. According to 2 Corinthians 4, it says Satan's the god of this world. And there are other passages, right? We understand this to be true. You're going to get up there and basically sometimes scold people, sometimes tell them about truth and teach it, and that's supposed to be enough. And I think the way we market and advertise truth, and this is why the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I was talking to one of my friends, he was a leader in the church. We were talking about seminaries, and I said, you know what? I said, I don't know if seminaries aren't the move anymore. I said, I'm not saying that it's not helpful to learn some things, and they can be helpful, But what seminaries don't do, they don't teach you how to be a pastor of a church. They teach you how to understand truth, theological truths in the Bible. And then those truths can be distinctively true based on their denomination or their interpretation. So they may not even be true across the spectrum, but they're true to what that particular institution defines truth, right? The few things that are objectively true in a lot of Christianity. A lot of it is just like, I apply truth. Pilate, what is truth, right? I said they teach you about truth on some level, but they don't teach you how to market that truth. Yeah, you take a homiletics class and a hermeneutics. Homiletics is preaching. Hermeneutics is interpretation. They teach you that, but they teach you stuff like main proposition and 3 points. And that's sort of the fallen condition focus is what they teach you this strategy. But when you read the Bible, do you honestly think that when Paul was writing Romans 8, every couple verses, he thought, okay, here's the main point and here's the 3 supporting subpoints? That's not how the Bible's written. So that you get taught strategies that can be beneficial, but they act like if you don't teach this, you're not teaching. Man, Charles Spurgeon was the Prince of Preachers. This Bama would take a section of a psalm and teach a whole sermon on that joint. It wouldn't even be in context. And he was the Prince of Preachers. What I'm getting at is this. A lot of the church focuses on truth, and you just need truth, and we do need that, but we need to know, how do I present this truth in a way that is going to make what I'm after, the gospel of obedience and try. Well, we shouldn't have to do that. We just preach. I don't think so. Don't give me that crap, because I'm from that. I don't think so. And let's go to we're going to look at this, because I think the Bible understands that. First of all, you know what? One of the things that made Jesus stand out, there are a couple things, and this one's very overlooked. There's a couple things that made Jesus stand out. Obviously, the miracles and things that he did, right? But one of the things that made Jesus stand out among all the Pharisees was something, I'm paraphrasing, but you'd see this in the Gospels. I should have pulled this up so you could see it. So I'm not just making this stuff up. But it would say stuff like this. Where did he get this teaching from? We've never heard anyone teach like this. Remember when the soldiers were sent out to go get Jesus and they came back and they were like, we've just never heard anybody teach like that before. There was something about the way Jesus taught. Like, think about this. We know about the miracle where Jesus fed 5,000 people, but more like 10 to 12,000 because of women and children were there. It said 5,000 men, but most people were married back then. They had families, man. It wasn't a big singles ministry back then, right? Or they were younger. So you got 10, 12,000 people there. How would 10 to 12,000 people sit down in a grassy field and listen to Jesus preach for hours? He went out on a boat. This is Matthew 14, right? Jesus just heard that John the Baptist was beheaded. He was going off to the Father to pray. He was grieved by it. He saw the people following, which said he had compassion because they were like a sheep without a shepherd, right? And then he says he went out on a boat and he taught them. And he taught them for hours to the point where it got dark. What would make people, he had no megaphone, no nothing. What was it about the way Jesus taught that made people sit for hours and listen to him? It was because they said, we've never heard anybody say this stuff like this. Where did you get your training from? He doesn't talk like the Pharisees talk. They were trained and they said the same stuff. He talks with an authority. He uses stories and parables. Jesus did things and said things in such a way that people were like, I want to hear this guy. You had Agrippa, I think it was Agrippa, when Pilate was like, oh man, I've been eager to hear you. I've been wanting to hear you, It was like, there's all this stuff, right? So, or Herod, I'm sorry, Herod, it was Herod. So I got all these kings in my head: Agrippa, Festus, Felix, Herod, all this stuff, right? Jesus had a way of doing this, right? He had a way of teaching that made the truth different. People wanted to hear it. And I strongly believe this is a lost art in the church. I mean, let's just be honest. Many of you actually get to me and say, bro, I can't believe, I hope your channel blows up. You're my favorite YouTuber. I'm not saying this to boast. I'm making a point because I think there's way better people with better content and are more gifted at this than I am. But some of you will tell me, you're my favorite channel. I love hearing you, man, because you say that, because I communicate things in a certain way that is attractive to certain people. And so what is it? So it's biblical to be like this. And I think in the modern church, we just think it's truth versus lies, and and then we're just really commanding people to believe. And these guys are doing things that make their presentation of truth attractive because they understand marketing and advertising. I think seminaries, if you're going to reach people today, I think seminaries, pastors could benefit from either reading, taking a college course on, or go to masterclass. I'm sure masterclass has a couple of things on advertising and marketing and the ways that you package a message to get people to buy it. I think we just assume we just preach truth and that's that. But that's not, I don't think that's true. Let me prove this. That is true. Don't get me wrong. Because people, no, Pastor, what are you saying? Of course we preach truth. I'm not talking, this isn't an anti-truth message. It's a how do I package truth so that people are drawn to it? So real quick personal example. You guys, I've done a couple videos like they lied to us about Genesis 1, 2, about the Bible, about this, about God. And many of you have been like, brother, this blew me away. Like, where did you get this training from? Where did you learn this from? Michael Heiser, different people and all of this, right? In 2022, some stuff happened in my church, spring, and I said, you know what? We need to do spiritual warfare. I knew that was the next, like, sort of area that we needed to focus on as a church. I didn't know what, but I knew that. And I told our church, I go on sabbatical every August. I told the church, when I come back from sabbatical, we're going to focus on spiritual warfare. But I knew that the way that most pastors and churches do spiritual warfare is they do 3 to 5, 6 sermons on Ephesians 6. For we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but and they break down the armor of God, right? They break all that down and they spend messages about, and each message is on a different. I was like, I'm not doing that because I think that presumes something about people's understanding of the principalities, the authorities, the rulers of this age, which is essentially a hierarchy of Satan's military. These are supernatural cosmic beings that are working against us and we don't even see it. So Paul is warning us. So this is what's happening. So I said, how do I do this? So I came up with this concept, or I adopted the idea from Michael Heiser, but I didn't take my conclusions from him. I got the lens of the supernatural storyline of the Bible from Michael Heiser and so a couple other people that I read. But my connections were my own. But I taught my church from September 2022 until July 2023 this whole different way to look at the Bible from a spiritual warfare perspective that covered a huge, and this is going to end up being a book. Some of that material you all heard in the They Lied to Us YouTube series, those videos, right? So I was trying to think, how do I market spiritual warfare in a way and not just do the same thing? And I got my principle from this passage. So let's look at this passage real quick. This is a well-known passage, you know it, but I want you to look at this from the angle in which I'm talking about, from the angle of advertising and marketing, all right? This is the passage we're going to look at. So this is Acts 17, beginning in verse 16. We know this passage well, but let's read this and watch how you see this happening. Watch how Paul, inspired by the Spirit, looks at this and says, I need to package this message differently. Now, I'm not going to have time to contrast it with when he spoke directly to the Jews, but he understood his audience. He understood the audience he's speaking to. And here's what the scripture tells us. It says this. Now, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, so listen, his spirit was provoked within him, as he saw the city was full of idols, right? So his spirit was provoked. He was upset at all the idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him. And some said, what does this babbler wish to say? Others said, he seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection. All right, so listen to that. This is what they said. He was preaching Jesus and the resurrection here, right? They knew it by name. They knew he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection. And then verse 19, and they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, right? So this is the big market. This is where all of the best philosophers gather together and they basically present their ideas about truth in the world and what are and they You're a superstar if you're good at presenting your truth better than others. And it says, and they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, may we know what this new teaching is that you're presenting, for you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean. Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So Paul understood this. Now keep in mind that the scripture tells us that he was a preacher of foreign divinities because he was preaching about Jesus and the resurrection. And here's what Paul says to a bunch of people. These are not Jews. They're not in the synagogue. These are non-believing Gentiles. And listen to how he packages this message. Listen to the marketing and advertising strategy of Paul. Let's look at what he says. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. Now keep in mind that his spirit was vexed. It was because of all the idols. The first thing, that's the last thing that you would expect Paul to say, is that I see that you are very religious. You would think he would come out correcting their idolatry, but he doesn't. He does not. He actually encourages them. He encourages them by saying you're very religious. In other words, I see that you care about spiritual things. And he says, for as I passed along and observed, he didn't say as I was pissed off about all this idolatry. He says, I observed the objects of your worship. I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What you therefore worship is unknown. This I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man. Now keep in mind, what he's doing is, he knows this is the kind of language that they talk about. Remember what it said, that now all the Athenians and the foreigners, so these are not Jews, who live there would spend their time, verse 21, in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So Paul says, let me tell you about the unknown God. The God, verse 24 of Acts 17. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of all the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Now, this is I'm going to make a statement based on what he said right here, right? But this is a whole different video. But listen to what he said, that God set the boundaries of dwelling in their dwelling place, that they should seek him and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. That is not the modern way, particularly in the Reform camp, that we think that people aren't looking and seeking for God, right? That there's no such thing as a seeker sensitive. There's 100%, but that's a different conversation. We're going to have that discussion one time. All right. He said, yet he is actually not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. And he quotes from one of their poets, right? Epimenides, right, is a poet of theirs that he quotes from. And even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. Now this, in him we move and have our being, was about Zeus. But he's saying, no, that wasn't about Zeus. That was about Jesus. Let me put y'all here. And he says, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. He's quoting from Epimenides, right? He's quoting from someone who's not a Christian and saying this, all right? It says, being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine is like gold or silver or an image by the art of imagination of man. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he fixed the day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed, and of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. Now, you know what's missing here? Here's what's missing here. Here's what's missing in this scene. Remember, it said that he was preaching about Jesus and the resurrection, right? Up here. So let's go back to verse 18. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him, and some said, what does this babbler wish to say? Others said, he seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection, right? Now, we know that he's preaching Jesus and the resurrection here, but when Paul presents this truth, he doesn't mention Jesus at all. You could hear this and it would not click. Like, well, what do you mean? And that's what happened. So it says in verse 32, now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, we will hear you again about this. So Paul went out from their midst, but some men joined him and believed, among whom were Dionysus, the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with him. So here's what Paul did, right? Paul understood marketing. He understood that I need to present this message in a way that will be palatable for these people. These people care about like statues and all these these places, these realities. So Paul was like, the God that you're talking about he's not made by man. He's going after everything they're saying about their gods and saying the unknown God that I'm talking about is not those things. He's not the gods that you have idols of and worship of. He understood. He didn't mention Jesus. He didn't talk about the Adam and Eve. He didn't get into none of that because he's speaking to people who do not know these things. They don't know the Mosaic law. These people he's not appealing to them the way he would Jews. He's marketing and advertising a truth that worked with the people. And that made some of the people say, some people were like mocked him, yeah, whatever, which is going to happen when you speak the truth. Then you got some people said, we want to hear you again. We're not convinced, but we're encouraged. We're curious, right? And then you had some people that believed. Jesus was a master at advertising and marketing. God is a master at it. Let me prove this to you. Because there have always been different gods, different religions from the beginning of humanity. Yet most of the religions in the ancient Near East, the Mesopotamian religions, many of them, we have no idea who they are. We don't know who their gods are. We don't know who the people are. The gospel, the Bible came about, 758 years after the Tower of Babel. Egypt and remember when they took them out of the Red Sea? All those nations, the Amalekites, the Girgashites and the Jebusites and the Philistines, and those people all had gods that they worshiped. There was a narrative about all these other religions and their gods by demons and evil spirits and Satan that was marketing and advertising. And so when the Bible was written, he gave all these other deities, cosmic beings, a head start. And then he wrote his narrative. And guess what? The Bible is still the number one selling book in the world today. Every year. It's the number one selling book every year. Because God is a greater marketer. Jesus is the greatest marketing advertisement in the world. And Jesus, when he spoke, was so different because he knew how to package the truth in a way that people would believe it. Now, he packaged the truth. Right? Paul was packaging the truth, but he wanted to make sure I can't just speak truth. It's not, we believe in, truth alone. That's not one of the 5 solas, right? That should be the 6th sola, truth alone, right? But I guess that's Christ alone. Christ is truth, right? But the reality is this: in the modern era, churches are boring. Pastors don't know, they don't think about how do I present truth. YouTube channels, we just think like, I'm just going to talk about Jesus and that's that. And then you're competing with these people, these guys, these false teachers. And I'm only air quoting it because I haven't heard enough of their stuff. But what I've heard, I would be concerned about a lot of it. But these guys are about marketing. So Michael Todd spits on his hand and rubs it on his brother-in-law's face, and it goes viral. And all these people are talking about how unbiblical, how unbecoming of a pastor it is. All the guys that are speaking truth, all of that. But your church is nowhere near his size. Now, this isn't about size. I'm not saying this isn't about size. This isn't that conversation. Because like I said, Satan has the biggest platform. He has the most worshipers. So the size doesn't matter for many reasons, right? But my point is this. How you market truth, how you advertise truth, will affect people believing in it. We are up against a master marketer and manipulator. Satan is the epitome of, hey, in a world where gas is $3.50, I'm selling it for $1.25. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's the cheapest gas. Let's go there. What people don't know is once you put that gas in your car, you now owe him. And now you got to live in accordance to him. He's a master marketer and manipulator. He's a master at it. He's a master advertising and marketer. And you can't just go at advertising and marketing with truth. Even Jesus did that. But Jesus presented truth so different from the Pharisees and the other teachers that it was like, dang, let's sit and listen to this dude all day. Let's not eat for hours. Let's just sit here and listen to him talk. It's fascinating. So I think, why is Michael Todd winning? Why are these guys winning? Because of marketing and advertising. They just do a better job at it. And if you're going to be better at presenting the truth, if that's what you're after, or let me say this to my brothers who are exposing the false teachers, keep doing what you're doing. If you feel like God's called you to do that, do that. I don't know how many videos you can make of these guys, but there might be some work that you're doing. Do what you do. If that's what you feel like that pleases the Lord, do it. But what I would say is, I think you're going to need, and you don't have to, who am I? You might have a bigger channel than me, so I just started taking my channel seriously within the last year. So if it grows, it grows. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It may not be the Lord's will, and that's fine. But I'm going to shoot for it. But if you have a big, I think we have to, because you're doing this, you're trying to target these false teachers. I think you got to think about it a little bit differently. You got to be a little bit more creative in your marketing. Market and advertise your truth. You're going to have to do that. Otherwise, people will hear you. You're going to just speak to the echo chamber. The people that already don't, I could be wrong. I imagine that if I were making YouTube videos to expose false teachers, my hope would be, so there's selfish ambition and godly ambition. The selfish ambition would be, I'm doing it because they're popular and I just want people following my channel. And maybe, I bet you there are people that are doing that. There's probably motives of mixed. Then there's godly ambition. I want to expose them because they're harming the body of Christ. And I want people to see this for what it is so that they can find truth in a way that will help them, that is in line with what the Bible teaches. I'm sure the combination is mixed. There's no one that's doing this and they don't want any YouTube subscribers. That's just not realistic. There's people that want super chats. Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's act like we got 3 other people in front of me and we're playing spades. That's the reality. However, I think if you're going to do this, I think you got to be more creative. If you're going to attack the people who are the best marketers of a particular kind of truth, and you're trying to expose it, I don't think you're going to expose it by not being creative and not thinking about, how do I package the message? Now, apart from that, if you're just a Christian, right, and you're just a believer and you're trying to honor the Lord, I think truth is important. We're not anti-truth. I am truth. I'm the gospel. I'm truth. I'm what the Bible teaches, I believe. But I think if we're going to win souls for Jesus, we have to figure out, how do we communicate truth in such a way through the lens of advertising and marketing? How do you create a message and market a message that you want people to buy, essentially, right? That's what advertising does. You get people to buy these things. What are things that people care about? Well, one thing that everyone cares about is not being left out. People don't want to be left out, right? They don't. It's funny. All the woke stuff, what the woke stuff underneath it was really about? That whole woke debate, woke versus white supremacy, liberal versus conservative. Underneath what it's really about, what all of that's really about, is I don't want to be left out. I want my interests seen and heard. I want to be seen and heard. We are a seen and heard society. I want to protect my interests. I want to be heard. I want to be seen. So when Black Lives Matter came out, people rallied because black people were like, yes, finally, someone thinks that our lives matter. You didn't even care about the women and what they actually believed in. You cared about the slogan. No one was marching carrying Karl Marx signs up. No one cared about that dude. No one even knew what Marxism was. People were just marching because they thought, yes, that this appeals to me. I want my interest. No one cares about me. I want to be seen and heard. And then you had the people on the other side. Well, you're calling it white privilege. Don't call me. I don't want to be that. I want my interest seen and heard. You're attacking my interest. That's all. Honestly, underneath is what it's about. It's really about people wanting what they believe is true to be seen and heard by other people. That's all it is. And the people in Black Lives Matter was a fantastic marketing campaign. It was a great marketing campaign. It created a whole industry that both liberals and conservatives benefited from. All the books that were written against systemic racism were in that particular category. It just was that. So while I didn't stand by him, from a marketing standpoint, Black Lives Matter was a temporary successful campaign. It just was. I don't care if you agree with it or like it or not. This has nothing to do with being woke. This is an observation about movements. In America, we care about commerce. We care about capital. And anything that makes billions of dollars is a successful marketing campaign. It doesn't matter if it's evil. People act like, well, that's woke, but yeah, but pornography, that's a huge billion-dollar industry, right? We got social media is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that manipulates and takes advantage of a ton of people. Most of the stuff in this world is not given to glorify Christ. It's given to distract you from it. But that's a different video. I can't wait to cover it. We're probably going to get into that tomorrow. So in summation, marketing and advertising, seminary is not going to give you that. I think for seminaries to be successful in this day and age, listen, when you're sitting down with a couple who's about to get divorced, or you're sitting down with someone who feels like they can't resist giving in to sexual sin, you're not going to take the impassibility and the passibility of God and tell them that. And they're going to be, oh yeah, wow, that's great. That's exactly right. You're just not going to do that. You're not going to talk about the communicable attributes of God. You're not going to get into your eschatological understanding of whether you're amill or premill or dispensational premill, or that doesn't matter to those people, right? You can give them a verse, but they're like, yeah, I know that verse well. It's not about, it's how do I market? How do I advertise this verse, this truth, to get this person to believe that they can honor God and resist whatever this is? And this is a lost art within the church. And that's why churches are failing. That's why people go to therapists more than their pastors, because we just don't know how to talk in such a way that resonates with people. We just think truth is all you need. No, truth is what we need, but how we present that truth can determine if people see that they need it. My job is to help you see that you need this truth, not just to give you the truth. And I think it's biblical to think about that and how we present these ideas so that we can change the world. But what do I know? What do I know? I just jawbone. All right, let's go to the tape. Out the gate. Will Smith out the gate. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about, baby. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you, Will. Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. You one of the faithful ones. I'm not faithful like you're not faithful if you don't give, but I appreciate that, man. I recognize it. I don't know your life story, what you have, but I recognize that people, money is important. And anytime someone gives you some of their money, I take that seriously. I have 3 boys down the hall, and any money that comes to me goes to them. And so I appreciate that. Thank you, brother. Faith Fire, the people in the pews are hearing the message they want to hear. 100%, I agree. But it's not just the message they want to hear, right? Like, here's a question I would ask. I think that's true. I mean, that's first. That's what he said in 1 Timothy 4, right? And 2 Timothy 4. But why do people want to hear that message? They have to endure sound teaching. I agree. But what if it was the job of people who know the truth to present sound teaching in a way that was palatable? I've known some people to sit down in front of like a pastor and talk about some trauma that they've experienced and hear something like, well, you just got to trust God. I mean, God's sovereign over all the things that we go through. And that's truth, but that's not how you package it. And that's not the moment you tell someone who just lost a child that God is sovereign, right? There's ways to advertise truth that help people. And this is a different video. But let me tell you what I loved about Jesus. Here's something about Jesus that many people, well, I'm just going to say it. Because I hate saying many people don't know. How do I know? I don't know what many people know. I'm not the Lord. But I think that there were 2 ways that Jesus understood. He understood sin from 2 levels. He understood it in a sort of metaphysical sense, right? That sin is against God, against truth, that people are going to hell for sin. He understood that metaphysically, right? He understood that. But then there was also a human element, right? Jesus understood the human element. And a lot of times he speaks from the human element. Let me give you an example, right? In Luke chapter 7, Jesus reaches up and brings a man back from the dead in the town of Nain, right? For this woman who her son had died. He reaches up and brings the boy back to life. John the Baptist at that point in time is in prison. His disciples come and say, fam. And they did say fam in my translation, right? So they say, fam, Jesus brought a dude back from the dead. But John says, go and ask him, is he really the Messiah or not? What? John the Baptist, who was filled with the Spirit in the womb and leapt in the womb? John the Baptist, who said, this is the Lamb of God to take away the sins of the world? John the Baptist, who told Jesus, I need to be baptized by you. I'm not fit. And he said, no, baptize me. And then he watched this Holy Spirit descend on Jesus in the form of a dove. John the Baptist, who said, he must increase, I must decrease. That John the Baptist is saying to them, go ask Jesus, is he really the Messiah? Huh? How in the world did we get there? And so they go to Jesus. Jesus is talking to a crowd of people. And they say John is asking. And Jesus says, tell John what you see. You know, the lame walk, the deaf have ears, and the blind see. And they had already told John that. But then Jesus says this. Blessed is the one who is not offended because of me. That's what he says. He says, blessed is the one who's not offended because of me. And then he turns and tells the crowd that John is the greatest born of all women. Which has happened. What Jesus did was he understood the human element. He understood that, yes, on a metaphysical level, John is doubting me, and he shouldn't be doubting me. But Jesus understood that he's offended. He's offended. So he taught the greater truth, because God is going to allow things to happen in our lives that will question us. John was probably thinking, why am I in prison? I didn't do anything. I was preaching the truth. I told Herod, it's unlawful for you to have your brother's wife. And I'm in prison for what? That's good advertising and marketing. Jesus, he understood the human condition, the human element. It wasn't just you need to stop sinning. It was he understood why John was offended. So anyway, I think yes, people want to hear what they want to hear. People don't want sound doctrine these days. True, but I think it's more complicated than that. But I agree with that in a sense. Don't get offended, but they're a great entertainer, same as Trump. 100%. I'm not offended. That doesn't offend me at all, but thanks for giving me the warning. Yeah, I'm not offended at all. I think that's 100% true. I think Trump is one of the greatest. I think MAGA, so Black Lives Matter was one of the best marketing campaigns of the modern era from the left. I think Make America Great Again was a brilliant campaign. It was brilliant marketing and advertising. You know why? Because Black Lives Matter was pretty, they were all over the place with what they really, it was simple what they meant. It was a simple message. And it came out at a time right after black men had been put out in social media as being killed, shot at, or whatever. Whether it was what you thought or not, right? But it was out there. So it was a brilliant marketing campaign, and it changed the world. People were marching all over the world. Well, Trump, what he did about Make America Great Again is he never defined what again meant. So everywhere Trump went, he let the people define what again was. So if you were in, Appalachia, the Rust Belt, if you were from Rust Belt, Kentucky, and you were in a coal mine field, and you want the mines back because it was an industry that was taken from you, and it was given to people overseas. It was that now they're doing the work that you could be doing. He told them, "Hey, I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to do it. I'm going to build the wall." And it was all these things that again meant that he never. It wasn't one idea. It was whatever you think again means. I'm going to give it to you. Brilliant. I think I think people don't give him his credit for that. That was brilliant. And I think that was Steve O'Bannon, actually. I think that was his creation. So both Black Lives Matter and Make America Great Again, I think will go down in history as two of the greatest advertising and marketing campaigns ever. I think they were brilliant in that sense. Mike Todd in particular does a good job of establishing hopefully you finish, Ivan. I don't know where it is. All right, we'll keep going. It plays on our wants and desires. 100%. I do. Yeah, I didn't think them frogs were real. Well said, right? I didn't think they were either. But a lot of people drank some Bud because of it, right? How many times were you in the office and would be like, Bud, Wise, So, how many times would you be like, Bud? And someone else would be like, Wise. And someone else over there, It just happened. Faith Fire, that's right. Let's get it. Don't forget, man, hit the like and subscribe button. Y'all be tripping. Y'all like the content and won't like and subscribe. Why are we at 3298? We should be at 3500 by now. All right. In our immaturity towards growth, we can be tempted because we're not. Yeah, that's true. That is true. That's true. I think we can be. I think we are going to be tempted, right? But temptation is to be resisted regardless of what level of maturity you're at, right? It's not like resisting temptation is only for the mature. Resisting temptation is what you do when you first become a Christian. I mean, that was why they baptized you. You ever think about, they baptized people immediately after these people didn't demonstrate fruit in their lives yet, but they got baptized when they repented, when they chose, because the goal was, now that you said you believe this, we're going to baptize you, and then you live according to how you should live. You got to repent. So I think maturity does matter, but you get to be mature by resisting. Immaturity will never be an excuse but it is a reality of why we resist, right? That is a reality. Jesus was mature when he tempted for 40 days. Yeah, 100%, I agree with that. My pastor was a straightforward expository preacher, and church membership gradually dwindled so much they had to sell our church. Faith Fire for the win, 100%. 100%. Everybody read this comment one more time, because I saw this happen a lot. I know some churches that did not recover from COVID. I know pastors that didn't recover emotionally, psychologically. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier this year who works with an organization in the Bay Area that interacts with a lot of pastors in the Bay Area. And I said, hey, what do you think is the biggest challenge to pastors this year, 2024, in the Bay Area? And he said, pastors are just now realizing that they're not going to ever get their congregations back the way they had them. And it's disheartening. I am blessed that my congregation has returned and is more than what it was before COVID. I cannot believe it. It's incredible, because I'm not impressive and I'm not impressed either. But the Lord has just saw fit. So yeah, what she says here, Faith Fire here, I've seen it too. You preach. But I don't know, but it could have been expository preaching. It might be part of it. People don't want to endorse sound teaching. But I think there is a place. I think there is a place for growing. See, this is what I mean about seminary. This is how this whole conversation started with my buddy. What seminaries do, what we think we need to improve in, is learning the original languages, or learning more truth, or learning this particular hermeneutic or whatever. We need to get this. I don't think that's the real problem. I think people get bored of hearing messages that are just, I know churches that are like just these Christian colloquialisms. Like, you don't really get into the beat. You don't really help people realize the Bible God actually understands where I'm at. You're just telling people what they're supposed to do, and they got to do it. And we're not pep rallies, right? We're not cheerleaders. We are responsible to communicate truth to people using all the faculties that we have, but we're supposed to grow in learning how to communicate truth in a way that serves the cultural context that we're in. I became a pastor in 2008, July 1st, 2008, I started pastoral ministry at Solid Rock Church in Riverdale, Maryland. I started there almost 16 years ago. There isn't a person who's been there that would say he was always engaging, not fiery. I'm not like a hellfire and brimstone preacher, but I'm funny. I'm what you see now. I'm the same thing on stage, just with more different, because I'm preaching rather than just talking. But I'm very much the same person. I crack jokes. I'm theatrical. I tell stories. I use all those things people always tell you that. But I've grown, because as the culture has changed, the way that you present truth, I think, has needed to change. And so by the grace of God, I've been able to adapt to what I think my church needs. And so we have people still coming. So I'm very grateful for that. But it's a work. It's a grind. And having said that, keep up the grind. Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna keep up, man. I feel like I'm gonna do this. I mean, if we don't get the 5K, then we don't. I don't know if I'm not saying I'm gonna stop, but I think it would be like, hey, where we at? What we doing? But again, I might be one of those people that's not done. I need to step up my game. So anyway, all right, always keeping it real. Professor Live, I appreciate that, famo. Appreciate it. Never thought I'd see the professor on this type of live stream. Love it. I don't know who the professor is, but since you said that, that's what's up. Oh, okay. Anyway, I just said it was disgusting. LOL. I don't know what that meant. Many who are first will be last, and last will be first. 100%. Jose, my dude. Appreciate you, Jose. Thank you, man. Thank you. Love your content. Love your contribution. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. It carried systemic racism because the theory of systemic racism was only a college paper or known academic circles, not a street phrase. 100%. It was a good marketing campaign. It was. But systemic racism wasn't a college paper, though. It was a historical truth that was truth in the sense that Stokely Carmichael and a lot of other guys in the Black Panther movement taught people. In fact, Stokely Carmichael, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was the first to bring up the concept of systemic racism in the 60s. And they were looking at that racism is embedded in the systems, because you have to remember, we live in a different era where there are not rules and stuff that are saying you can treat people a certain way based on their skin color. We don't have that now. And so back then, Jim Crow laws were incredible. And people say, well, that was just in the South. Yeah, but Jackie Robinson was in Brooklyn, the Dodgers, and racism was something that was accepted, like anyway. So that stuff is there. It wasn't just a college paper. Maybe critical race theory was a college paper that stemmed from a deeper issue. But anyway, spot on, bro. Spot on, bro. They know exactly what the people crave and 100% how to draw their attention. A form of godliness while denying its power. Well said, Ivan. I think that's spot on. You're spot on, bro. I think that's because now you're talking 2 Timothy 3 right there, 3:5. Having a form of godliness and denying its power. And then 3:7, always learning but never able to arrive at the knowledge of the truth. So you're spot on, my friend. That is good talk right there. That's what I think is happening. I think that's it. They understand that. But they market truth in such a way. Here's what people, let me tell you, so let's just say this, right? Because Ivan, I think that was spot on, Ivan. Here's what Ivan's getting at. Here's the truth that Michael Todd, I'll say Michael Todd because why is Michael Todd winning? I won't say anyone else because I've watched more of his stuff than anyone else. Here's the truth that Michael Todd understands about people. This is what Michael Todd, and this is what shapes his preaching, I believe. Michael Todd understands that people genuinely desire God, but they're hurt and they want things from God to feel comforted by him. Michael Todd understands that people want to be comforted by God, but the way that we get that comfort, particularly in America, where we're a consumeristic, materialistic society, is we want things from God. You want blessings, you want this, you want purpose, So he markets his messages that way. If you see, y'all don't want to hear this because y'all don't want to stop doing what you're doing so that God can give you that purpose. I ain't gonna let nobody stop my breakthrough. I ain't gonna let nobody stop my blessing. Don't let nobody stop your purpose. I will not let anybody stand in the way of my purpose. See, it's all like he understands you want things from God, so let me tell you how to get them. But the real, and God knows that, but the real truth is not what you need from God is more from him, more things from him. What you need from God is more God. Like all these things that people want from God do not exist in eternity. People want to be married because they're single. Okay, great. You want to have children, but those things don't exist in eternity. What exists in eternity is we're going to be in the presence of God. We get to see him face to face. We get the most God we're ever going to get. Heaven doesn't consist of all these materialistic things. There are rewards, sure, but the greatest reward is not heaven itself. It's being in the presence of Jesus, being in the presence of God. So again, we all want things from God, but instead of teaching that the thing that we do in this life now is going to prepare us to get more God, we teach we need more things from God. And that's the greatest marketing. That's what he understands. He understands that. Michael Todd, I mean by he. BLM, carried the concept of systemic, making it, yeah, I agree with that. I agree on some level. Making it new to the young and sophisticated. I agree with that on some level. All right, Faith Fire. How do you feel about contemporary Christian music, lights, performances that so many Reformed pastors are against? You know what's interesting? So that's a really good question. I think so. I think pastors are against it, and I get why they're against it. Lights, perform, all that stuff. But I think to what end though? Like, what are we like? To what end? I don't. If it's steering people away from truth, then I get the concern, right? But if it's the lights, performances, and stuff that are so many, like, I don't get the real big deal about it unless it's steering people away from truth. I think there are going to be a variety of ways that we can worship and sing. If you think the Bible, even though people have this idea of the relative principle of worship, I think it's called, where people think like this is how the Bible describes. I just don't think the Bible does that. I don't think the Bible does that. When it says like in Ephesians 5 about psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, I think it's relating to the culture of the day. And I don't think it's saying that the only thing that people should sing are songs, hymns, and spiritual songs. But then what is a spiritual song? That could be anything that has to do with things that are spiritual, right? So I don't have a problem with these contemporary music, lights, performances. I don't really care necessarily. But how is it affecting people, right? I think those things aren't necessary. That's why I love our church. My church is not impressive. You're not going to come in and hear the greatest worship team. You're not going to get the greatest announcements. You're not going to hear the greatest sermon, but we just are what we are. And it works for us. And everyone has to do what works for them. So I think a lot of pastors, you know what I think also? I think a lot of Christians in America, we think we're not persecuted enough, believe it or not. 2 Timothy 3:12 says, indeed, all who desire to live a godly life will be persecuted. But because we're not persecuted enough, we look for causes to be godly. So we take up these causes. We're against wokeism. We're against conservatism. We're against, certain worship songs that don't have, there's all these causes. And a lot of the causes that we have, they take us away from the character. Listen, you shouldn't sin against others because you think you want them to stop sinning. That should never happen. But that's a separate video. We'll come back to that. We are not called to be marketing experts. I'm not saying that, Caleb. That's not what I'm saying, brother. I'm saying we use all the tools, right? We're not called to go to the doctor either, bro. We're not called to have health care either, but you have it. You use it because it's beneficial. We're not called to understand philosophy, but you do it because it's beneficial. We're not called to understand math, but you use it because it's beneficial. We're not called to do many of the things that I'm not talking about being a marketing expert. What I'm talking about is how do I apply the truth and teach a message that can draw people to truth. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the scriptures do that a lot. I think Paul did that in what I just read next. So it's not about being a marketing expert, my dude. I'm talking about we need to figure out how do we package truth in the modern era in a way that's more palatable. Squeak, squeak, boom, boom. You got me out here off the Thai bow out this joint. You got me out here off that, man, off the Thai cheek, man, off the UFC. Man, I appreciate you, man. Thank you, brother. Squeak, man, you come through. Squeak be coming through like a crook through the window, bro. I appreciate you, fam. Well, thank you, bro. That means a lot, fam. I'm getting ready to take my boys on vacation to California for a month. Man, I'm going to be like $1 million in debt coming from that joint. I need every penny I can get, but I want them to have a good time. My family's had a tough year, and I'm grateful to them for how they've handled it. So thank you, brother. This is going to contribute to them significantly. I don't think churches are necessarily failing. Yes, there are bad churches, but they're bad apples or anything. I just think the world is more evil, but the Bible tells us the Bible. Yeah, I didn't say churches were failing. I'm not saying churches are failing, but I think a lot of churches have fallen. Like, I know churches that, well, it depends on what you mean. I don't know what you mean. When you say I don't think churches are failing, based on what data? Like, where are you getting it from? I'm saying I know of churches that did not make it. There's a lot of churches. I know I was in a part of Acts 29. Tons of people left Acts 29. Tons of churches failed, man. They didn't recover from COVID. So I would disagree that churches aren't failing. I would disagree. The church isn't failing because the gates of hell will not prevail. But I think, yeah, there are bad churches, but I think it's just that. But that. So anyway, I may be different, but I want to be. Yeah, Caleb, I appreciate you, bro. I don't know why you're saying what you mean. We want to comfort. We're not talking about. I'm not talking about comforting by marketing. It's how do I market the word so that it's more comforting to some people. I'm not saying that you don't want to be comforted with the word. Thank you for saying that. But let's just be clear, brother. Unless you're perfect, there are times when you struggle with what the word says. You struggle with being comforted by the word because you're a human being, Caleb. So what I'm talking about is, and maybe maybe you are unique in that sense. I've never met you, so I don't know. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying we need to be comforted by marketing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I want to understand how do I present the truth that comforts in a way that could be palatable for the people that I'm talking to. So if that's not you, then that's not you, bro. You don't go to my church, so I'm all right with that. I think what I'm saying is pretty clear. I don't think I'm saying we got to be marketing experts, but I do think we got to be excellent at what we do. And I got to give an account for how I did things. You know what's funny? Augustine is the father of the Reformation. It's not Luther or John Calvin. Most of the theology of the Reformation what Luther did was Luther had justification by faith. John Calvin had predestination and God's sovereignty. So those were two different sides of the Reformation. They didn't emphasize the same things. And what Luther did, a lot of their theology, though, came from Augustine. You know Augustine? There's a book called, I think it's called When the Irish Got Saved or Became Something. Oh, I wish I could remember this book because I wrote about it. Okay, so in my book, Does God Listen to Rap? I have a quote from this book, When the Irish Something, right? And in this book, it said that, it talked about Augustine, and it said Augustine was a very popular, he was a North African priest. He was African, not European. Black Lives Matter. But it said that Augustine had a preaching style that incorporated rhythmic teaching, not just rapping, talking over music, but rhythmic ways to describe his music and also rhyming, right? So they say that he had his most famous sermon was called Bona Dona, which is Bonadona, and it was famous because it mixed rhyming words with rhythm. So not only was Augustine the first gospel rapper, he started CHH, but he understood that there's a way that you do truth. Let's go to the Bible. Apollos, right? Remember when Priscilla and Aquila came to Apollo and said, hey, you're teaching the wrong, because Apollos was vicious. He was a great speaker. Even Paul acknowledges that Apollos was a great speaker. He had flair. He knew how to present truth, but he needed to be discipled. That's what I'm talking about. No one's talking about comforting. It's how do we do it? Augustine wasn't just preaching truth. He was a way that he did it was what people were connected to. But I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sure I don't. Let me see. Showing doubt. I'm not sure what you're getting at there, Squeak. He's not united with him. I'm not sure because I wasn't. You might be talking with somebody else. Disgusting was in reference to the... Oh, yeah, brother. Oh, man. Listen, I told my friend that if I was Michael Todd's brother, I would have fought my pastor that day. I'm sure he knew it was coming. And I'm sure Michael Todd knew if I do this, it's going to go viral. Infamous, remember this phrase, infamous still has the word famous in it. So even when you do something that's infamous, still has the word famous. My pastor, I would have went to his body. I would have went on the church discipline if he'd have done it to me. I would never do that as a pastor. Never. The professor in the life, that's dope. Is it the real professor? I don't know who that is. Is that the real professor or is it somebody trolling? You know how people be trolling. You talking about the professor, the basketball player, the N1 dude is tough. I'll always like this handle. If that's the real professor, get at me. I'd love to have you on the show. I saw you on Ruslan, a buddy of mine. Jerusalem! I saw him on that not too long ago. I'd love to have you on, Professor, and rap, if that's really you. But I think somebody might be trolling. All right. The professor is a famous street baller that was a part of the analog. Now he does. Okay, that's dope. If he's watching the stream, that's dope. Appreciate that. All right. Jose, once again, it's the infamous. Appreciate it, bro. My dude, thank you, Jose. I appreciate you, famo. I'll catch this video in the replay. That's what's up, Rich. See you. As long as they don't have a bunch of grown men singing what sounds like romantic love song. Man, I tell you what, I'm with you on that. I cannot stand when, there's one love song that I forgot it's a worship song, and it says something like this. I don't remember. I brought it up to someone. They were like, I love that song. It says something like, you came from heaven and gave us a big wet kiss. And I forgot. Somebody knows that song. I hated that phrase. You know what I think? So, all right, let me say something, Faith Five, because let me say something that I should have said when you asked the question about pastors. Here's what I do think about modern Christian music, but it's deeper than that. I think this is more conducive of the actual way we view the gospel. I believe that people think the gospel is primarily about us, about Jesus coming to save us because he loved us so much. And there's truth in that. But I don't think that's the primary reason. I think our salvation is connected to the primary reason that Jesus came. The Bible is not about our salvation. As I said in previous videos, it's God is against the gods. Our salvation is the result of Jesus coming to overthrow Satan, right? So we go back to John 12. Jesus said, beginning of verse 31, right? Jesus says, now the Son of Man will be glorified. And he says, now the ruler of this world will be cast out, right? And when I am lifted up, I will draw all people to myself. So he says, the ruler of this world, now is this world will be judged, and the ruler of this world, this is John 12. And when I am lifted up, I will draw all people to myself. And then he said this to indicate the kind of way he was going to die. So Jesus was saying, I'm here to overthrow the ruler of this world. And when I am lifted up, that's going to be another video when I explain that in more detail, another video about what they lied to us about the gospel or about salvation. I think there's an emphasis that I think people have where it's all about us. Even though we sing, it's all about you. What we really think is that Jesus did this just because. So you get this thing like, Jesus would do this for me if it were just me and he would just die for me. I don't think so. I think Jesus did what he did primarily to overthrow the enemy. And that's what Genesis 3:15, he says to Satan, this one will give birth to a seed. He will crush your head and you will bruise his heel. I think this. So, Kurt, may I ask, where did you go to seminary? Just curious. I didn't go to an official seminary. I was part of a family of churches that had a pastor's college within that family of churches. And so they took 3 years of seminary and crammed it into 1 year. It was brutal. Now I didn't go to college. I went to high school and then I was a gangster in the streets. I got a PhD from Shoot 'em and Kill 'em University. So from prison U. But so I didn't have anything to compare it to, but there were guys that got their MDivs or THMs, PhDs, and they said that was the hardest theological year of their lives. So Rich, my dude, listen, Rich didn't even hit a live stream when he's coming in. You see that fight recently with Tank and Crepin? That's what you just did, Rich. I appreciate that. Smash the like button. Thank you, Will. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. I'm responding to the earlier points live. The last thing you responded to wasn't pertaining to marketing, but what we comfort people with and how I'm definitely not only perfect. But I think you're still missing the point that I was making when I was live. Your response, Caleb, is making it sound like I was saying that we need to work through marketing and not comfort with the word. That wasn't what I was saying. I was saying essentially, let's throw marketing and advertising out of it because it seems to bother you. What I'm saying is we need to be better at being more strategic in the way that we present the truth. I love that Charles Spurgeon's grandfather said this about him. He said to Charles Spurgeon, you may preach a better sermon than me, but you can never, he said, you may preach Christ better than me, but you can never preach a better Christ, right? That's what Spurgeon was effective because he understood. That's all I'm saying, brother. You're getting lost in marketing and advertising. So I know what I said live because I said it. I'm not saying anything different. I'm responding You got to remember, I'm going through all of this stuff. I'm reading it. So I just think you're responding to what I'm saying. I disagree with the way you're processing what I'm saying. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. We agree to disagree. So I'm not saying anything different than what I'm saying. I understand what I think you're getting at, but I'm just saying we need to be, as pastors, work on our craft enough and how to present truth in such a way. Pastor Paul did it. Jesus was known, like, man, we've never heard anyone teach like this. All that stuff is real. So yes, that's the real professor. That's what's up, Professor, man. Good to see you on the live stream, bro. Encouraged by that, man. Hope you continue to come on. The songs reflected, they say, I, me, man, T-Dog, my gosh. That's my problem. This is what I love about the hymns. Hymns get to, they get to the truth. They go upward. So much, and again, so I'm glad you said that. And this is what Faith Fire was bringing up, right? This is what T-Dog is saying. It's me, 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 me. This is what I mean. This is what Michael Todd and them understand. They understand that we have a meology. Listen, we are meologians. We are meologians. We have a meology. It's about what God did for me. The gospel is not just about what God did for me. The gospel is about what God did to glorify God, and I am a part of that. It's not about what God did. The gospel is not about just what I did for me, what he did for me. The good news is that the power of Satan is overthrown, and now that's the good news, and we neglect that. We are meologians. It's too much meology going on around here. What we need to be is mysteriologians. Paul said in Corinthians that we are keepers of the mysteries of God. All the theology that we believe answers all these questions that the Bible doesn't. I'm going to tell you, the elect, did I choose God or chosen by God? The Bible doesn't address that as clearly as people make it seem like. It doesn't. But anyway, what do I know? All right, man, y'all got me on here an hour and a half. Yeah, this might be my longest video. Presenting truth in a palatable way is necessary. That's how Paul, that's all I'm saying. Please tell Caleb that. I'm not trying to beef with you, brother Caleb. You're misinterpreting what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. I'm just using advertising and marketing because those are modern terms that we understand. We have to present truth in a palatable way. I think that's faithful. I think that's faithful. Bro, I just seen on the new Mark Rogers, he taught that from the passage earlier. You missed it. Yeah. Well said. Bro, I just seen on the news out there that Stevie Wonder grabbed some snickerdoodle cookies at a cookie spot in Prince George's County. That's where I live, in Prince George's County. Let me find out that Stevie Wonder is stealing cookies. Now, see how I took it and ran with it? That's not even what he said, but see how I ran with it? That's crazy. Meologians. Faith Fire, 100% meologians, right? Right. Yep, I got here late. Topic reminds me of Proverbs. Yeah, right. That comes with actually being a part of people's lives, though. But I do understand what you're talking about. A lot of pastors not willing to meet with people. I think so. Well, you know what it is? You know what I think, Caleb? I think it's not that a lot of pastors aren't willing to meet with people. I think a lot of pastors don't have an understanding of the human condition. We speak from the metaphysical reality, the truth, like sin, about sin. Hey, God is how we understand sin. Sin is against God. You go to hell for that. That's all true, right? Unbelief, that's all true. But Jesus said to the adulterous woman, where are your confused? You know why Jesus, this is why I think the Bible doesn't say this. So speak I, not the Lord, as they used to say in my old church. You know why I think Jesus told the adulterous woman, where are your where are the people who are, charging you with sin, right? And he said, where are your condemners? And she said, they're gone, Lord. He said, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. You know why I think Jesus had that response for her and was very gracious towards her? Because Jesus understood that this woman was just brought into the temple. She was caught in adultery. She's terrified. This woman thinks she's going to get killed. She's going to be stoned. She has no idea what's going to happen. She's brought in front of everyone. First of all, who commits adultery and wants everyone to know about it, right? She is brought in front of everyone. She's embarrassed. She's probably dressed enough but look, she's just, and Jesus has compassion, I think, on her. And doesn't embarrass her in front of everyone. The woman at the well in John, right? John 4 or 5? John 5? Woman at the well, he says, look, he could have crushed her. Like, yeah, you're a prostitute. You're sexually immoral. You have 6 husbands, and the one you're with now is not your husband. He could have crushed her, but he didn't. He let her know, I know who you are, I know what you're doing. but there's going to come he understood that in that day and age, women without a man would be lost. And then probably in the Samaritan culture, it was worse than in the Jewish culture. Jesus could have crushed her and said, you're sexually immoral, and if you don't repent, you're going to burn in hellfire. But he said, no, a day is coming when you will worship. So I think Jesus understood the human element of sin. It wasn't just repent. Yes, there's true. I think, Caleb, a lot of pastors don't get that. You don't get the human element. Sometimes we sin because we're disappointed. Sometimes, like John the Baptist, he was disappointed. He was offended at God. Sometimes we sin because we're angry at God, right? Sometimes we sin because it's very familiar and we don't know how. So there's a lot of it. So I think Jesus understood the human condition in a way. You got to show a Strack. Yeah, but that was me and Strack talking. This is just me, bro. So I'm at 140 now. We might break that. All right. Meologian, 100% use it. I might put that on a t-shirt. Don't be a meologian. I might have to put that on KurtKennedy.com. I got to get this. I got to get this store back up. I've been fake. My son was supposed to be developing shirts, and he is faking right now. So I got to get that back up. I'm thankful my pastor is accessible. 100%. I'm accessible to my people too, by the grace of God. I'm accessible to you. I'm sitting here going through comments and talking to you. I don't know any of y'all for real. But I love doing this. It's fun. All right. They also only brought the adulterous woman instead of both parties as 100%, right? They were just trying to trap Jesus. They didn't really care about her sin, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that was true. Some people say that they thought it was one of the Pharisees who were having sex with her. No one knows that. But yeah, it wasn't the law. But my point was not about what they were doing. It was more about Jesus showing care for people. Like Jesus did that a lot. He understood the human element. He understood there are reasons why we give in this. And it's not just stop sinning. Yeah, that's true. He did say repent. He told the woman, go and sin no more, right? But there was a way that he communicated that I think is missing, because for us, we're worried about being too therapeutic, right? This is why people go to therapy. Well, one of the reasons, there are plenty of reasons. Some people go to therapy because it's anonymous. You don't want your people to know what you're struggling with. You don't want your pastor to know. And also because pastors, I don't want to be meeting with people for a week every year for 5 years. I think I failed. I want you to appropriate and learn how to apply the gospel. I don't think people be like, I've been in therapy for 10 years. Why are you boasting about that? I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. Why is that something to brag about? I would feel ashamed if I've been in therapy for 10 years. Wow, I can't get over this. I don't think anyone needs 10 years. Well, maybe I could be wrong. I don't know. Most people do not need multiple years of therapy, to be honest. And so I think in that sense, but I think also people want the anonymity, so they don't want to go to their pastor. They'd rather pay someone who doesn't know these things. But I think also therapists do sometimes a good job at understanding they do a good job at being sensitive to what people have struggled with. So, but I'm getting out of here, man. I ain't going to break me and Strack's record. Man, I appreciate y'all, man. Good. This is my longest individual show, 142. I did not count on this. But the last hour has been you guys. So, or whatever, last 50 minutes, whatever. But I like doing this. I like going through the joints, man. So, but thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you, Mark, man. Always faithful, bro. Pastor going on too. Ain't that true, right? God bless you. Yeah, man. So listen, they're going to be short videos. I'm going to have this series of videos that are going to be whatever the topic is in 8 minutes, but then I'm always going to have these. Because in 8 minutes, I'm not going to the tape. I can't. I'm just going to say what I'm saying. I'm gone. But I love being able to interact with you guys. I feel like I know you. I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting some of y'all. That would be dope to either run into you somehow or meet you this side of glory. That would be dope, man. I appreciate that. So, all right. Appreciate y'all, man. And I'm out of here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get the five. Because it's a us. It's not just me. It's a us. Y'all watch, man. I may be talking, but y'all listening. It's a us thing. Let's get to 5K. Let's get there, all right? Let people know, like and subscribe to the channel. If people say, man, that's long, tell them listen to it twice the speed. I'll sound like, blah, 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 blah. And everything was saying over there, blah, 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 blah. I'll sound like Micro Machines back in the day. Remember that? And Micro Machines. Blah, blah, blah. I used to crank call people back in the day before caller ID. And I'd be like this, ma'am, this is Frank from Maintenance. And we have your 3/4 inch dolly rod with the 4-foot cam with double action and rotary piston ready for to be delivered for cash, COD, or charge. What do you like to do? And they'd be like, excuse me? Can you say that again? I'd be like, sure, ma'am, I'm sorry. This is Frank from Maintenance. And we have your 3/4 inch dolly rod with the 4-foot cam with double action rotary piston ready for. They'd be like, sir, can you slow down? I used to do this all the time. So I'm hip to it. I don't know why I'm telling y'all this. Because now I'm almost breaking the record. All right. 100 people watching. Appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe to the channel. You know what it is. I'll be back tomorrow with a crazy topic. Let's get to it. Grace and peace. I'm out of here. See you, Lord willing,